Hello, students. I'm Michael Hicks. I am the instructor for the online version of the African American History class for Simmons College of Kentucky. And what I'm going to talk with you about in this short video, I'm going to go over Chapter 12 of the John Hope Franklin Higganbotham text, From Slavery to Freedom. We're going to talk about Chapter 12, the color line. And I'm going to present a general overview and the themes of these chapters that I want you to read, review, and cover. You also, on the portal website of the class, there are slideshows for both chapters 12 and chapters 13, which I want you to use and reference in tandem with the reading and anything that you may get out of this short discussion. Chapter 12, the color line. By 1890, many of the actions of Reconstruction implemented upon the Southern states had grown ineffectual due to bad oversight, neglect, or opportunism on the part of Southern whites eager to restore their own status quo. Many state legislatures began to pass local-level Jim Crow laws that effectively served to reverse the federally mandated Civil Rights Act of 1875 and other national-level legislation. Indeed, white supremacy found its way back into the South under the thinly veiled guise of public protection and safety. Soon enough, African Americans in the South found themselves outside the government without a vote and removed from any chance at equal accommodations, both politically and socially. So here's some of the themes that you're going to deal with as you're reading and reviewing Chapter 12. Among them, disenfranchisement. White Southerners used various means to disenfranchise blacks. Violence was, as the text describes, the surest means, but it was not the only one. Once whites regained political power, they took advantage of their position to keep blacks from voting when it suited them and to exploit black votes for their own ends when necessary. Certain state legislated mechanisms, including poll taxes, literacy tests, complex ballots and voting processes, and gerrymandering were legal means to disenfranchise black voters. Though the path of disenfranchisement was fairly steady, there were notable moments of black and white cooperation, usually based upon class identification, such as the radical agrarian movement. But the growing consensus among Southern whites, eventually, was that removing blacks from the political process altogether was the most beneficial to the white majority. Despite black protest, by 1910, blacks had been constitutionally disenfranchised in most Southern states. The Democratic Party's white primary effectively functioned as the government of the Solid South, and Jim Crow was victorious. The civil rights cases of 1883 and the 1896 decision in Plessy versus Ferguson are landmarks here, of course. Plessy's separate but equal doctrine gave legal sanction to segregation. The U.S. had become, as white Southerners called it, a white man's country. As with so many attacks on black rights, African Americans fought these decisions as best they could. Many African Americans moved to cities seeking economic and social opportunities, but they found segregation there as well. Unions generally did not welcome black members. Black women usually found work as household servants. Urban housing and transportation was also segregated and presented daily challenges. As American imperialism spread into the Hawaiian Islands and the Caribbean, it brought into its orbit millions of people of African or mixed descent. The Spanish-American War affected African Americans from the beginning. Some of those aboard the Maine when it exploded were black. When President McKinley called for volunteers, African Americans responded, though as the text described, their treatment was shabby. The role of black soldiers in Teddy Roosevelt's Rough Riders victory is generally not known. As president, Roosevelt's public opinion of the black soldiers' role in the war varied according to his audience. There were also black Americans who spoke out against the war and imperialism. But as American imperialism spread, it was necessary to implement racial policies abroad that would not undermine the segregated system at home. As the text describes, Du Bois's famous color line was not one of merely black versus white, but of the relation of the darker to the lighter races of men in Asia and Africa, in America, and the islands of the sea. The numbers of lynchings and race riots were staggering. Lynchings decreased slightly after 1900, but the number of race riots grew. Racial violence was not limited to the South. Full stop, chapter 12.